We have a national housing crisis in the United States reflected in the fact that millions of Americans do not have a safe, legal place to sleep. Now, the exact extent of the crisis varies. Some reports suggest that 1 in 30 children under the age of 18 are running wild. So we have unaccompanied minors at the rate of up to 1 in 30. We've got 2.5 million right in that category alone. Next, we have a large veteran population that has never been able to reintegrate into a society that, on the one hand, induced PTSD in many of them, and for decades actually denied the issue. There's a great book Bessel van der Kolk has written, The Body Keeps the Score, in which he works for our Veterans Affairs, for our Veterans Health Department, and is actually given pushback in the 60s and 70s as he's discovering PTSD again. It's been a long suppressed phenomena of war in different cultures, and these people have been out on the streets, unable to cope, high rates of suicide. There's also the fact that housing prices have risen so high, disproportionately. The housing market has risen higher than the basic wage of the average American, which means that it's harder to get into a home. And then we have an addictive problem. 1 in 7 Americans is addicted to substance. Addiction in the long run leads to deteriorating families and deteriorating income, deteriorating ability to show up reliably for a job. We also have, social media addiction, which reduces productivity, even as house prices go up. So there's a squeeze going on. Ray Dalio is the world's leading hedge fund success story, with Bridgewater Capital and a study of financial cycles going back several hundred years. Ray has built successful models for understanding the economy as the basis of investing. And one of the most important discoveries he made is in the long-term debt cycle of every country, that there is a cycle of borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and then needing to pay back that debt, which always correlates with a certain degree of recession. Ray is a leading financial advisor to the Chinese government, to the Fed, to specific European governments. He is very widely respected because he makes a lot of money because his predictions are right, more than almost any other hedge fund in history. When he says that we are at the end of a long-term debt cycle and we're needing to go into that squeeze of repaying off that debt over the next 8 years, you can never predict the exact time. We can anticipate a more than 60% probability that we will experience economic pressures, severely or lightly, in the next 10 years. The addiction cycle is not going anywhere. Governments are constantly making it more expensive to build in their respective areas. I've been a contractor for 25 years. There has never been a time when my government at any level has made it easier or cheaper to build. And it's understandable when you look at the lineup of power. You have existing homeowners, you have realtors, you have architects, you have contractors, and you have local governments, plus businesses for those, suppliers. All of these people make more money when housing prices go up. Not to mention banks. There's only one group of people who are hurt and hurt badly by housing prices going up, and that is the homeless and those who rent. The homeless and those who rent benefit from house prices staying stable or going down. The homeless have no voice. And traditionally, renters don't organize, motivate, and attack house prices. They're just getting by, and the poorest of our culture tend to be the least politically active. So we can expect, all things being equal, that housing prices will continue to press upwards even as the economy goes through volatility, even as the income for average Americans relative to housing costs goes down. Thus, we can expect a trend driven by these fundamentals of increased homelessness over the next 10 years. Now, even though existing homeowners, real estate agents, architects, contractors, local government, businesses, and banks all benefit from housing costs going up, the cost to the overall economy of homelessness is enormous. In Marin County, some officials put the estimate at $40,000 per homeless person in cost to emergency services, policing, parks, a variety of impacts. Some put it at $65,000 per person. So that's the cost of creating and maintaining a chronically homeless person. $40,000 to $65,000. That's more than the cost of putting someone in a home. My house costs $4,000 a month to live in. Somewhere between $40,000 and $65,000, each homeless person could get an entire house to themselves and break even. But it wouldn't be a break even. Financially, it would be a break even. But we have an outbreak of hepatitis within the homeless population in Southern California. You see, disease is not racist, sexist, or, it doesn't judge a body based on its income. A disease judges a body based on how easy it is to bridge the skin barrier and enter that system. A bacteria is not racist, is not bigoted. It looks for dirty, cold, stressed out human beings to enter the human species. And from there, it spreads to the rest. Now, if you're a disease, that is a great strategy. And as a disease, I'd like to thank everyone in U.S. politics and local government for making it easy for me to access an entire species of human beings. Because you've provided me with cold, traumatized, addicted, sick mammalian bodies littered throughout wealthy cities in one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. A country that has consumed more net resources per person than any other person in human history. And you've given me access to all of their bodies. By your bigotry, by your stupidity, by your myopia. Because you think once I, as a disease, enter the homeless population, you think that I'm going to just sit here? You think I'm not going to infect your daughter, your brother, your husband? You see, I'm not racist. I'm an intelligent disease that's looking to spread in the easiest way possible. And you've just given me a wide open door. And you've done it through the thought of that's not my problem. Well, it sure will be when you're spending billions to fight the disease you could have preempted by taking care of your own species. It's up to you. We as a culture like spending money on police. We don't like it, but we will spend money on emergency room visits. And they're very expensive. And we like spending money on jails. We'll arrest homeless people for urinating in a park or somewhere they have to go. It's illegal, but they have to go. We'll arrest our homeless people and put them in concrete boxes that are more expensive than housing them. We like doing that. It doesn't make any sense, but we like doing it. Now, this is what creates the housing crisis. I've gone into a lot more detail in another hour video, and I'll invite you to watch that if you'd like. But what I want to discuss in this video is how do we respond to a national housing crisis in a way that cuts through all the red tape, in a way that deals with this issue on the basis of physics, of raw economics, and raw psychology. So let's begin. So the first myth that we need to break down when we're dealing with physics as opposed to politics and policy and law is scarcity. And the first area to begin is land. Now, I spend a lot of time traveling, and I don't see homelessness in Copenhagen, a place where they have a 400% higher quality of life than the average American. I don't see homelessness in Thailand, where they have, again, a higher quality of life on average than Americans. And you can I've done surveys to find out how much happier Americans, Germans, Russians, Australians are when they move to Thailand. And the average is about 350%. Some people say 100 times happier. Some people say double, 36 times happier. It's a very big increase in well-being. And the density is much higher. So we don't have a land issue. And I thought I'd break down some of the areas that we have tons and tons and tons of land. Now, one area that we have lots of land is on all of the zoning, where we've said that you can only have one house per lot of land. Another is only one legal unit within the house. So, there's so many units where people have, extra, there's so many houses where people have extra rooms, where they have undeveloped garage attics, where they have vast areas of the landscape where someone could easily put a tiny house. And what's taking all of that off of the market is not the land itself, it's local housing authorities that are literally deleting vast amounts of currently residential land from being used for residential purposes. So this is a very important thing to understand, because we don't actually have a land or a housing crisis. We have a crisis of local policy. Now, let's look at other areas of land that we have. We've taken land from our public parks out of the picture. So we have vast amounts. For example, I'm in Marin County. You fly a drone or anything over Marin County, it's 80% raw land. 80% of it doesn't have any structure on it. You could put a little structure here, a little structure here, a little structure here. There are vast amounts of land. But even in the developed areas, you have parking lots. Now, parking lots are interesting because, I'm in California, so let's deal with that. You have vast areas of ugly parking lots. They're there to facilitate the ease of shopping. Now, it's worth noting, as we move in the direction of online purchasing, that these big parking lot stores are actually declining as more and more people have things delivered to their home. Businesses are going out of business, freeing up parking lots. So this is a trend that's going to continue. And this is an extra revenue source. But let's look at all the examples of parking lots. So here we have 200 feet of black paved parking area. It's generating a lot of heat. It's collecting heat. It's generating a lot of heat. Cars that park in here in the sun, you come back from shopping, they're very hot. Wears out paint faster. In the rain, you get wet. So you've got parking structures that have absolutely no utility 80% of the time, meaning this parking structure, If you take any given space in the structure and you look at that space over a year period, you just keep a camera on one parking space for an entire year, 80% of the time it's empty. 80% of the time this parking space is empty. And when it's there, it's doing one thing. It's housing a car for the time that the person goes in and shops. Then off they go again. Now, one of the things that, along with online technology that's coming in is the revolution of self-driving cars. That's about 10 years off. 2, we've got Uber and Lyft moving more and more people. And in some cases, we're seeing a movement towards carless households. Now, this ties in with the ease of local transportation. The more intelligent the transportation loop is, the more people will use local transportations. The more unintelligent it is, Uber and Lyft. Now, currently, many towns, like my town in San Rafael, does not incentivize a carless house. Now, here's why. In order to build a house in San Rafael, you have to invest, I would say, a good $100,000 in parking. You've got to buy a bigger piece of land that can accommodate parking. You've often got to build a garage. You've got to have a place set out, which on steep hillside can take a good $100,000 in concrete work and grading to park, let's say, 4 or 6 cars. Or you don't get to move into your house. Now, if you say, okay, I want to be ecological, number 1. I want to save parking at local businesses, 2. Because remember, for every person that has a car, the local businesses and the city have to build more parking. For every person that uses Lyft, Uber, electric scooters, and electric bicycles or bicycles, these businesses can save money and the city can save money. But so could the homeowner, but only if they get a reward for not being a car-using house. Now, the reward is not having to build on as big a piece of land and not have to allow for parking, so that saves a homeowner $100,000 on a piece of new construction. Okay, but back to parking here. So we got all these expanses creating a lot of heat. And let's go up 20 feet. And what we're going to do in going up 20 feet is we are going to create a number of things here. We're going to create water collection. We're going to create solar. We're going to create garden. We're going to create shade. And we're going to create housing. So what's gone on here? The temperature has gone down for all these cars, number one. We're also going to create income. We're going to create income for the city, and we're going to create income for the business that owns the parking space. And we're going to create ecology. So, how does that work? Well, if we do concrete structure, it's a reasonable thing. You can do steel, but if you do concrete structure, for this space here, you've now got a 200 by 200 foot concrete pad that is reinforced. As you know, there's numerous ways you can have quite a thin pad and have it reinforced at almost every parking space, or you can reinforce it every 20 feet. It doesn't really matter. Every 50 feet, you create a pad. And this pad shields the cars from all rain. It also shields the cars from all sun. It creates shade walking to and from the commercial district, and is funded. You see, the existing business doesn't pay a dime. They get paid for this. It's funded by the high density housing that's up top here. Now, as we'll get into, different housing models later, we've got pod hotels in Japan. In Tokyo, the real estate is more expensive per square foot than in almost any place on the planet. It's up to $16,000 per square foot, if I remember correctly. And yet, they use pod hotels, tiny sleeping dwellings, to let you stay in Tokyo for about $40 a night. Now, this is luxury. We're talking your own slippers. We're talking Wi-Fi. We're talking, a custom shower robe. We're talking 5-class luxury in a pod hotel where you sleep in a 4 by 4 by 8 foot space with a backpack, and where you've got common areas to gather, to wash, to do all the things that need, So we've got 5-star pod hotels as a proven protocol that is in high demand in Japan. We don't have pod hotels here. We do not have pod living here. But we have a proven model that in a 4 by 4 by 8 with common area space, people can live economically, cleanly, and safely for months. And where I live, we don't have anything like it. You're looking $100 and up, and we're way outside the budget range of what a person who's homeless can deal with. When I do my interviews with our homeless people, $20 a night is quite manageable. So that's our price point, is $20 a night. And if you take away the 5-star, if you take away the complimentary breakfast, if you take away the high finish in architecture, etc., if you take away the overhead where a pod hotel needs to be cleaned every day, etc., you have a model for a safe, legal place to sleep that could get someone through a college degree to where their income can go up and they can start affording other things. We don't have this in many of our cities in the United States. And I jump to that point here because, again, if we go back 500 years to the Native Americans living on this land, none of them were homeless. None of them lived in more than about 100 square feet. A teepee is about 100 square feet. It was ample for sleeping. They weren't homeless. They were fed. They weren't criminals. There was plenty of land, as there still is. Now, if we understand that if our culture had not come to this land, every single person on this land would have the right to move freely and erect a 100 square foot teepee with less of an ecological footprint than any of us live in. The average American consumes 100 tons of garbage. You and I, by the time that we're dead, will have generated 102 metric tons of garbage that will be dumped in a big hole somewhere. That's not sustainable. Well, there's all kinds of things that aren't particularly sustainable about our culture, but the important thing to understand is that as governments, we have created a series of laws and policies that have generated homelessness by making something as simple as a teepee illegal, but not providing a legal alternative that is affordable for a growing number of Americans. Which means that millions of Americans are worse off than if they had had a different genetic lottery and had been born to Native American ancestors. That's not progress. To go from being able to put a teepee anywhere in the country and where no one owns land to a place where every square inch is owned, but millions of Americans don't have even 100 square feet to safely and legally put any kind of a temporary shelter. So we're not looking to create 1,200 square foot mansions here. What we're looking to do is address the millions of Americans who can and want to afford on their own simple, cost-effective, safe, legal housing at $20 a night or less. So back to our parking structure and our concrete pad. We've got the option of shipping containers. We've got the option of custom structures built out. We have an arrangement of garden sheds. We have custom housing that can be built in an integrated kit for as little as $23,000 a unit. You can get shipped to your house a fully assembled, for $23,000 per unit, a fully assembled 20 by 6 by 8 shipping container that has your own composting toilet, your own reverse osmosis water system, fully furnished, your own LED light system, your own port to plug into a solar wall. Totally built. $23,000 a unit. $23,000 a unit can be purchased for $400 a month. So whether it's custom, whether it's prefabricated, whether it's $6,000 shipping containers, which everyone uses recycled materials to develop themselves, regardless of the model, the point is if you can buy a completely prefabricated and shipped living unit that is completely self-contained, and all you have to do is mount it and bolt it onto a concrete pad, and you're done. You've suddenly taken what in my town is you can't build for less than $650,000. Can you build this concrete pad? Can you hire a crane and put a container onto it? Can you build a little garden around it on the concrete pad? Can you buy a $23,000 completely prefabricated and self-contained unit? Yes, you can. So if we take, even if we want to be absolutely absurd in our degree of luxury and we want to turn these into $100,000 units, mostly in red tape, because that's what we're good at. If we want to turn this into a $100,000 unit, it's still 6 times cheaper than any unit we can build in my county. Now, when you reduce the cost by 6-fold, does housing, homelessness go down? Of course it does. Now these units can be pod hotels. They can be low-cost rental units on a daily basis. They can be monthly rental units. They can be low-cost housing. They can be temporary emergency shelter. You can configure it however you want. The point is, they can be fully built in a way that generates money for the city and generates money for the business owner. And how many housing units? So for a 200 by 200. Space. We can comfortably house more than 120 people. That are taken off the streets. Now, if you can house 120 people in completely self-contained units, because let's move to the next issue, utilities. Bill Gates has been investing a good $200 million of his fund in the development of completely self-contained composting toilets. Now, these are safer, cheaper, more compact, and completely independent. They use a fraction of the cost and energy it takes to have a citywide sewer system. There is no issue at all around composting toilets. The best toilets use heat and UV to completely eliminate germ and bacteria, something that doesn't happen in our system today. And what is generated on the other side is completely sterile fertilizer. Completely sterile fertilizer. Now, what about the toilet-to-tap programs that are beginning to be introduced on a municipal level? Again, an area of investment that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a part of. You can see Bill Gates drinking former toilet water that is now safer and purer than the typical water we have in our taps. Now, that system of, if you can purify toilet water, you can certainly purify rainwater with the same system, is my point. Well, whether it's a single reverse osmosis container for the entire unit, which makes a little bit more sense, or whether you have the $200 Watts reverse osmosis system per each household, which I have in this house right here. You're going to be drinking water that is cleaner than that comes out of your city taps. And you've got plenty of area to collect that water and to store that water. Where? In a shipping container. And this is not garden water. It's drinking water. So now you have toilets and water. Now then on the top of each of these roofs, you can have solar that generates more electricity than you need for your entire shipping container. Which means that you can either sell it back to the grid and help with the California effort to reduce energy consumption. You can become a utility and start generating money. How about selling it to the business? How about saying, here's your deal. We, in our city, are going to honor your business for helping solving our house crisis, number one. Number two, we're going to shade all your cars for free. Number three, we're going to protect all your cars from rain and snow. Number four, we're going to give you free electricity. Your entire grocery store, your entire Home Depot, your entire Costco, no electricity. We're going to put the Powerwall batteries on the side of your wall. Here's your solar fleet. No electricity here, no electricity for your building. Now the buildings already have electrical hookups, so it doesn't have to be a precise formula. Meaning you can have an 80% reprieve on your electrical bill. You can have 100%. You can make money selling it back to the utilities. It depends on the exact design and location. But the point is that if business owners are given the choice, let's say that every one of these 120 people provide, $50 a month rent to the business, electricity to the business, shade, protection to the business. Oh yes, and custom to the business. Because if the business is any good, and you've got 120 people living on the roof of the parking lot, where is the easy place to go into the business? Now this is, of course, completely car-free. Now, if it turns out over the next 10 years that parking lots in this business below start going wasted, the business owner has another option. Create certain housing units on the lower floor and sell that, or sell or rent parking spaces to the residents above. I mean, let's just say that there's only 2 days a year when a business's parking lot fills up with the amount of online retail that goes on. Well, now you've got an option that some of those people might want to own a car. But otherwise, what you have is electric bicycles, Ubers, Lyfts, and public transportation. A carless facility that's not adding to traffic. This is just the first of more than 50 specific ideas, each of which alone can deal with a complete elimination of the housing crisis in the United States without causing any net harm to the city. Now, the city can structure this development, for example, with a nonprofit in a relationship that goes as follows. First of all, the city needs to create a policy that differentiates a certain criteria of low-cost housing as, you could call it, emergency shelter is probably the most politically, manageable of this approach. It can be called anything: humanitarian aid, intelligence, low-cost shelter, emergency life support, police reduction. You can call it whatever you want because it is all of those things. You can call it a parking saving measure because none of these people are using cars. You can call it a budget reduction because every person who moves into one of those units is going to cost the region less money than they would out in the streets. You can call it whatever you want. But the reality is that you have a designation, which is really a political game, to frame language in a way that people make sense within their own paradigm. But the physics of it, and the economics of it, and the health of it, and the humanity is that when you take someone off the street, you save money. You improve the entire country's health. Again, diseases are not bigots. You improve the country's resilience with a model like this. The power grid goes down. Who's going to be coming to these folks to plug in their cell phone? The power grid goes down. This business still has electricity. You're improving the resilience of the city, the health of the city, the humanity of the city, the money of the city, the enjoyment of the shoppers, the sense of abundance for the entire community. Because right now, in my town, you break your back, a customer doesn't pay you for a big contract, a company goes bankrupt, and you're on the street. Because when something that big happens, you don't have an extra $4,000 in your pocket to just keep going every month. That's a trauma because your survival is in jeopardy. Your dignity, your survival, your business, everything is in jeopardy. Not so when these are available in abundance. Not so when you say, okay, it's a tough year. A client didn't pay. A medical bill came due. Hard finding a job. And so I'm on the street. So now I'm homeless. Now I can't get a job. Now I'm dealing with constant threats to health and dignity, and I'm not going to get back up again. No. It's like, okay, we move into these for a year. Now, of course, Well, let's just put it this way. If we've done such a bad job with our existing housing infrastructure that you have an exodus out of existing housing into this, well, then it just tells us how absolutely terrible the existing housing crisis is. And it's about time we provided more of this, because this is better for the environment, it's better for the city, it's better for the people living there. And you get things like art. You see, art can be outpriced. Paris was a very popular city in the 1800s for artists because it was cheap. It's no longer cheap. Now it's a tourist destination that makes tons of money for residents to remember the past, to reenact the past. But real art is never highly paid. So if you have zero low-cost housing, zero places where people can fiddle around and talk and collaborate for $200 to $400 a month, you just don't get artists, and a bit of the culture dies. It's healthy for a culture to have low-cost housing so that a small percentage of that population who is not financially motivated can follow their passion and not be bankrupted along the way. When you have nothing but high-cost housing, you are a culture that kills dreams, art, and innovation. And the future of that culture is much bleaker than the culture that embraces the many long shots that our young teenagers today are dreaming about, that are not going to bear fruit for all of them. And for others, it'll take 10 years of risk and speculation before something amazing comes out of it, like the Pixar studio. A little project of George Lucas, fiddling around in relatively low-cost, low-quality warehouses. And then one day, that gets turned into some of the most amazing media of our culture. That is art and speculation at a low cost being leveraged into $1 billion industry. That's what this region is about. Garages, dreams, low rents, hard work and long hours. Suddenly, after a certain period of time, with a huge failure rate, 99% of everything started in Silicon Valley has failed. Well, you don't want those failures to devastate the entire lives of those people. And that's why you need low-cost housing. So you have this interesting thing in the San Francisco Bay Area, where low rents and innovation and high risk created an explosion of abundance that is worldwide, only to drive up all of the rents in the region. So now no more innovation can take place for the person who has the new idea that's 20 years out, because the rents are too high. So we kill our future when we have no resource of cheap rent. And it's very important to understand, this is not a handout to the homeless. This is an investment in a vital culture, which is eclipsed when the short-term greed of local housing authorities drives up the cost to maximize revenues. And all low-cost housing is eliminated. So we've got tons of options. So I hope this, gives us a little bit of a sense of some of the things that are possible. Now we have a similar thing with our public parks, because the current module with public parks, and we'll just, take a little breather here. But the current thing with public parks is, you and I live in expensive, high energy, high garbage producing home protocols. As I say, it's enormous. generate in a day. So because we've created this model of parks being free from our pollution in response to the fact that our model is highly polluting, we have this sense of kind of oil and water. Parks should be free of humans, basically, because humans are innately destructive. But what if we work that formula around a bit? What if rather than saying, humans plus destruction equals death to parks, that's true, equals humans minus parks, so to save nature, you've got to get rid of the human. What if you change the equation around to say human plus ecology equals health for parks equals need more humans for nature. Okay, so to look at that equation, you've got to ask the question, is it possible for a human being who wants to actually generate more oxygen than CO2, to recycle more than the garbage they consume, to reduce the fire risk in the park, a very big thing in California? Is it possible for a human being to do that? And by what metrics? Is it possible to create a relationship with the park, with the public land, where the park, the ecology of the park blossoms because a human being is there? Now, if we measure it on the CO2 oxygen continuum, a human being has to plant 300 trees to be carbon neutral. Now that's living our lifestyle, driving around in trucks and all that. But let's be generous. Let's say that every human being on a park will create 300 trees. 300 new trees on a park will exist because that human is on the park. Number one. Number two, where I live, in New York State, they just spent $4 million to try and reduce the problem of ticks leading to Lyme disease, deer ravaging the parks, because we have unsettled the balance by killing coyotes and wolves and all that. So what if we say that every homeless person or every person, because it doesn't have to be a precise equation. If we can create a protocol by which everyone benefits, including public land, if for every acre of park we have 10 people on that acre, or one person, let's say one person per acre, that seems more reasonable. Let's say, okay, we have a protocol of one person is going to improve the acre of parkland significantly in all areas relative to ecology and human use of the park. So we have a 1 to 1 acre ratio. And let's say that every human gets 200 square feet of habitable space. And let's say that it's underground. Now we have the nice Hobbit motif to borrow with, a nice Hobbit hole underground. So it's hard to say, well, if one person invests 4 hours a day to improve the park, if they plant more than 100 trees so that they're generating more oxygen than carbon, if they reduce the fire risk by picking up dead branches and managing them in a way that actually benefits erosion, etc., if they help control the deer population by hunting venison to keep the deer population within the original range that was healthy for that ecology, so that the new deer, for example, don't eat all the new trees. And you establish what that is. How much is our deer and you have that person count the deer population. Do biological and ecological research in the park. Help build trails and maintain trails on the park. And live for free for as long as they're happy to be in that protocol, a stringent ecological protocol where people learn. For example, in Thailand, many of the young people will go off and be monks, and they'll experience discipline, service, simplicity, meditation. And it's one of the reasons, I think, that so many people are happier in Thailand than they are in the United States. It's not about money. It's about cultivating an inner life. Well, you can't cultivate an inner life driving back and forth in traffic 2 hours a day to a high-paying executive. No. You've got a bombardment of stimulation that is so loud, it drowns everything else out. So where are the places in our culture that those people wishing to contemplate inner life can do it? We're not providing for a segment of the human psyche that has traditionally always existed in some place or another. So if we create, let's just call it a hobbit hole, but there's a whole host of technologies. If we create a hobbit hole, which means a living roof and less than 200 square feet dedicated for that, if we create a protocol in which every person that moves into a hobbit hole, and it's renewed monthly, that basically the conditions are you must contribute more to nature and more to the public by existing here, or you don't exist here. This is reserved for those people called to do that want to do that are able to do that, and is renewed monthly on the basis that you are doing that. Well, the cost of reduced forest fire, the cost of managing the fire, you've got people every acre. You've got water and plans. That's part of their responsibility. What's your plan for your acre in the event of a fire? Where are you at? You report on your acre using app technology so that you have a grid for an entire area of public land. Is that possible? And how many thousand acres and thousands of people you can have it's a core formula change. So we have an abundance of land. We have an abundance of utilities. We have an abundance of options of living that consume 90% to 95% less than we're consuming. We have more and more transportation options that are more and more reasonable. Now, noise is a huge part of the landscape. I was in the Philippines visiting the Batak tribe on Palawan. And to get to the Batak tribe, you have to walk cross 4 rivers. So, of course, there's no motorbikes. The soundscape is stunning. Moving water, silence, birds. The visual beauty. There is not a single person in Marin that has the quality of beauty of these native tribesmen. The soundscape, the visual scape, the quality of the air, the smells. They don't have Porsche shops next door, repainting enough and, polluting the entire block with body paint that's going directly into brain toxicity. No. And they don't need any money. What they get from, in terms of governmental support, is 100 kilos of rice a month. 100 kilos of rice a month to compensate for the fact that they don't have as much land as they had before to grow their own food. It's not a big environmental impact. It's not a big economic impact. There's no crime back there. There's no police back there to manage the absence of crime. It is a stunning example. And do you know how much their house cost? $100 in nails every 8 years when they rebuild the house out of bamboo as a family adventure that takes about 2 weeks. Every 8 years, you spend about 2 weeks with your family with $100 in nails, and you've got a new bamboo house. It's a stunning quality of life. It's illegal in the United States to do that. If I go to my land in Marin County and want to do that, I can be arrested for breaking any number of a dozen laws. And yet, this points to the insanity of our current policies. Because if we could have no crime, no garbage, no ecological impact in beautiful natural environments that didn't require any public money, well, why exactly wouldn't we be doing that? How exactly are we so superior in our current protocols that take so much energy and money and leave many of us a lot less happy than these people? You see, they're not stressing that they don't have the latest iPhone. It'd be a joke. They don't need it. They've got survival, security, love and belonging, and self-esteem at a higher level than many Americans for less than $500 a year for an entire family. Well, could we learn a few things? So, you have transportation, which, as you go electric, you improve the soundscape. So I wouldn't be in favor of four-wheelers, running gas and stuff through parks. No. I go to parks for quiet. So bicycles are okay, but so are electric bicycles. I've got one. It is incredible. Electric bicycles. Now, part of the soundscape of a park means anyone, spending time there has to use headsets for all media. We don't want to walk through our parks and listen to ghetto-blasted music of someone else's design. So we need to protect the soundscape, the visual scape, while simultaneously improving the ecology, reducing the risk of fire, improving the maintenance of trails. And I think that is an incredible deal for the American taxpayer. That volunteers choose to live an ascetic life and show real love and care. They want to be there on that acre of land. And where you can thank them on an app. You walk through that area and you see the trails are really nicely maintained. Maybe they've planted a few beautiful flowering native plants. The tree species and diversity is incredible. They've got fire preparation technology You can thank them. It's so nice to walk through your acre of public land. Thank you for taking care of our land. It's free for the taxpayer. Because after the taxpayer pays to build the little 200 square foot hobbit space, or just makes it available for the first person to do that, and simply maintains the management, meaning if the public comments that this 1 acre of land is constantly unkempt, or someone's being rude to them, then that lease doesn't get renewed. It's simple. So we have tons of land, we have tons of transportation, and with app technology, it's going to come faster and faster and faster. We're going to see an explosive reduction in transportation that simultaneously is quieter and cleaner with electric, where you're going to be able to start walking out of the park from your acre, and where the GPS on your phone tracks you and tells the driver at your current pace you will be arriving at X trailhead at this point. They swing on by, pick you up, all quiet electric, and off you go. You don't need a car. You got your bicycle for exercise, etc. And we do need to integrate and create more vehicle-bicycle hybrids for more exercise and health. Transportation is a revolution, and as we make any house in the community car-free, it will incentivize the car freeness, because you save the price of the car plus the $100,000 parking area, plus it looks nicer, plus you can buy fewer areas of land, plus more land gets buildable. And then you have more city parking spaces that are saved because you're dropped off. It's incredibly good for all concerned. We're in that cusp where this is going to be happening over the next 10 years. Communication and data via the cell phone is a revolutionary technology that we're not taking advantage of for inter-public, intergovernmental communication. We're not taking advantage of it. And it's an abundant resource. What we have in the domain of app technology potential is really getting close to superconsciousness. Because, well, let's just take my own business, for example. I'm a contractor. I tell my crew to go out and do this, this, and this. The client comes by, asks a question, and said, could you do it like this? Do I get in the loop at all? Or do I arrive at the end of the day and find that the crew has done something differently than what I asked because the client said something, the client didn't tell me, the crew didn't tell me, but neither of them understood how that tied in with something that's going future. I mean, yes, that would be nice, but you want a 3-foot door, and that affects the width of the door, or that affects, whether a wheelbarrow could go through there, and so you weren't thinking of this. Well, there's currently no easy way for the client and everyone involved to be linked with media to just grab and say, could we do this and this? I get the video simultaneously, the crew is there, I respond, and I don't have to drive to the site, which saves traffic, which saves CO2. We're dealing at about 10% of our capacity of intelligent information management. When we have a park grid that's gridded out by GPS range, where you don't need markers because your phone tells you what range you are, and you are standing at marker number 62B right now, at the intersection of this point and this point. You are now entering this square mile. Within this square mile, this human being is responsible for this square mile of the park. This is their contract with the public. There will be no, media played audibly in any way that anyone can hear. The trails will be maintained safely and to this standard and this standard. There will be no dead wood laid around for fires to burn. You should not be able to see the hobbit hole entrance from any of the areas of the trees. There will be no gas-powered machinery. All work will be done with electric, including chainsawing. They now have electric chainsaws, etc. When you have that contract there, and the metric, and you as someone walking through in the public can say the trail's 5-star. There seems to be a downed tree which ties in with 3 other trees, and I think, this person may need a bit of help to get 3 trees out of the way all in one go. There's just one person in an acre. There's a lot going on here, and so that's the feedback there. And that goes to that person. And it goes to the park manager. And anyone else in the public can get an alert as well. This is my trail. You tap it on the app. I want to walk from here to here, and you get an alert. Mile number 3, the trail's blocked with this and this, so you can't bring your bike. Everyone gets the alert instantly. This is possible today. And as one of the homeless people I talked with, many of us have better phones than you do because we're not paying rent. We don't have a car. So this is our lifeline. We've got the latest iPhone, you see. And so when you deal with an app that can be released, that can affect things at that level, it's a revolution in communication that saves money, saves time, and what it can do is it can enable trust-based relationships based on nuanced data over time. Because one of the things that we're hung up on in the United States is this idea of fairness. And it has its pluses and minuses. It's toxic in its extremity. Because we will literally kill people in order to be fair. But a much better approach is nuanced value creation. In other words, you can ask, is this fair? Is it fair that, someone who's overweight can't fly on a plane with the same price when they take up 2 seats as someone who's not overweight? You can say, is it fair? Well, is it fair to the plane, the airline, most of which have lost money over the last 100 years, that the same, the truly fair thing would be to pay per kilogram of total weight, because it costs the airline per kilogram of person, kilogram of this, and so you could say skinny people ought to get discounts on airlines. Where basically you and your package will all be weighed and you will be charged per kilogram per mile flown. That's what we do. And then you could just compete on, well, this isn't as far a flight, this isn't, I'm really skinny, or I'm really fat and I've only got a backpack. It's all the same in terms of the airline industry. But we get hung up on these things. And one of the things that this precludes is it reduces many things to the lowest common denominator. Because I can't fly a radio control plane in any park in Marin County. Why? The risk of fire has been one citation, and the risk of accident another. Now, I was flying a plane out over a marsh So it's wet, and there isn't anyone in the marsh. And there's no one in sight. And was asked to stop flying. It's like, well, where can I fly? Well, nowhere. Well, surely you can see that this cannot, the 1 in 10,000 times that this could conceivably catch fire is not even relevant because it's in a marsh. Oh yes, we see all that, but it wouldn't be fair is the idea. In other words, we can't be intelligent because we have to be fair. Now, I think that reality works better when you have a risk-reward benefit analysis, where you basically say, this is 1 in a million risk and provides a lot of benefit, so go ahead and do it. Where you basically say, you have skills that these people don't have, so go ahead and use those skills. You don't have skills, so go ahead and don't use those skills, where you get to know each person, basically. Now, where this becomes incredibly important in app technology is you can't manage and verify these things currently. Now, you don't want people chainsawing, for example, in a public park if they don't have a safety course on chainsawing. It's a specific set of skills. Why don't you want that? Well, you don't want someone felling a dead tree on top of a passerby who, they didn't know how to maintain the safety protocol. And there's plenty of members of the public who haven't a clue about how to be safe around chainsawing, and they should not be chainsawing. But what if I, as an experienced contractor, want to volunteer an hour of time to clean up an area of park path? Should we say, no, in order to be fair, no one can help sort out the park? Well, is that fairness or is that stupidity? Because I want, as a taxpayer, for a member of the public who knows what they're doing, to do stuff for free for the public. But we don't know who these people are. App technology is a way to create nuanced, reliable data. Yes, this person has insurance for chainsawing. Yes, this person took this safety course and it's marked. And it is this person you're encountering. And where someone can see who you are. Where they can see you there and say, okay, who's that person? Oh, that person is a this, and this, and this, and he's doing this. Okay, I feel safe with that. Who are you? Well, you're this, and this, and this, and there's no data on this, and this, and this, so this could be an issue. So I'm going to bring that to the attention of the larger community. There seems to be someone not knowing quite what they're doing in this area. So this is all possible with app technology. Now, the other important thing just to be aware of is time. Our homeless are currently we've got literally more than 100 million hours a day free being wasted in the United States that can be harnessed to move our culture forward. Our homeless have lots of time. Now, they spend it panhandling. They spend it carrying shopping bags back and forth so they don't get stolen. They spend it walking a mile to take an illegal shower here or hiding here. They spend it in all kinds of unproductive ways. But there are hundreds of millions of hours being wasted every single year that we can make available to construct. We can actually recruit, teaching skills, discipline, and learning about someone simultaneously as we build in a supervised way and work with our homeless that need support reintegrating with our culture. This is something I've done all the time, taking people that don't have any skills and giving them a great opportunity. Now, finally, we have growth. We need to take people who are stuck. And Americans are stuck in many ruts, addictive ruts, media ruts, job ruts, people that don't like their job but that aren't learning and doing anything else, people that are homeless, and they're just stuck. There's no way forward. There is a process with hope, by reducing trauma, by increasing empathy, by increasing training, by increasing honor, by differentiating people with data. You see, because right now our homeless are undifferentiated. I met a contractor recently. So he's a veteran. He's a contractor, and he's got cancer. And he's doing community service projects. That is a completely different profile from the homeless person right next to him. But to the cars driving by, there's just one word: homeless, and a stereotype. Communication and data, where people are differentiated, and you know the skills, the accomplishments, the values, and the challenges of each person, and how you can support them in continually improving their well-being. This is an enormous incentive to grow. When you can win an award as the person who's most on time of all the homeless people who help out with volunteer work, that's incredible. That's motivating when you wake up with arthritis and it's cold and this and then the other, and you remember your childhood trauma and you don't want to get out of bed. But I'm close to winning the award for the most on-time homeless person who shows up to volunteer work. I'm going to get up and do that. And I feel good about myself. You see, growth and honor go hand in hand with nuanced data. When you're going to work that hard and everyone's going to call you a bum because you're homeless, you stop growing because you're not honored for who you are and what you're doing. You're lumped in with the lowest common denominator. You can't get out of that loop without data. So all of this goes hand in hand. And in summary, we do not have a land crisis. We do not have a utility crisis. Transportation opportunities are more abundant than they have ever been and cheaper than they've ever been. Communication and data, we have literally $1 trillion of investment in the hands of almost every one of our homeless. $1 trillion spent on the computing industry, on the Google industry, on the Android and iOS platform, on reducing the sizes of microchips, on battery technology, on screen technology, on app technology, on touchscreen, on camera. We have $1 trillion of leverage in the hands of the poorest people in the world. And that can be leveraged to create a portfolio of nuanced data like nothing we have ever seen. We've got millions of hours of wasted time that can be harnessed with nuanced data to help capitalize this revolution. We have the opportunity to spur growth with honor and with intelligence based on nuanced data. And we have the opportunity to help local businesses, to save the city money, to make the city money. By any number. And because I've talked about it in other videos, just know there's 50 versions of this. You can build these kinds of structures over marshes and wetlands in a way that has no impact on the environment. You can revolutionize the vehicle, the mobile vehicle dwelling space and renting places for the night, etc. You've got integrating with existing homes. You've got off-the-grid tiny houses. There is no end of ways that we can reduce cost, reduce environmental impact, increase health, increase dignity, increase growth, and create a vital living culture. And the myopic barrier to all of that is fear, apathy, ignorance, and bureaucracy. It's a political environment in which if you set off on a great adventure, and let's say the first on top of parking lot structure has an unforeseen difficulty, who gets the blame? Who gets the city gets complained about. Screw the fact that you're saving the environment, that 120 lives are immediately, going uphill, because those are things that are more invisible. And so one of the things that needs to be done as part of this, just to acknowledge the politics of the situation, is to create vehicles and legal entities, first of all, where cities are required to take care of the homeless people they generate through their policies. And secondly, where you have nonprofit structures that agree to abide by a protocol and manage the protocol as a buffer, so that politicians are a little bit more courageous in doing something that is good for everyone, but that might lead to a few complaints by a few self-absorbed, traumatized individuals that are just focused on their own little impact. I think this is incredibly exciting, and I want to thank you for taking the time to explore these ideas.